And I hear Nick Minchin is now saying the same thing. The way I assess it is this. The Labor Party appears to have lost a net 14 seats to the coalition, 1 seat Melbourne to the Green, and 1 seat Denison to Andrew Wilkie, so total Labor losses of 16, which would take them to 72 seats. The coalition has won 14 seats net from the Labor Party. We've won 9 in Queensland, 4 in New South Wales. We appear to have lost 2 in Victoria. We are likely to win 2 in Western Australia, no change in South Australia, and to win 1 seat in the Northern Territory. We had 59 on the notionally in the old Parliament. We would, if we pick up those 14, that's 73 seats. So 73 for us, 72 to the Labor Party, and 5 independents or minor parties. But there's one important assumption that I'm making in that calculation favourable to the Labor Party. It assumes that 4 seats that are really too close to call, Corangamite in Victoria, Moreton in Queensland, and Lindsay and Greenway in New South Wales are all go to the Labor Party.
Okay, all right, yeah, that's pretty much what Anthony Green was saying, I think. Now, Penny Wong, politics now, because you've just heard Maxine McHugh make some pretty stringent criticisms. First of all, of the Labor campaign. It struck me that she was suggesting it wasn't such a great idea to go early, and secondly that it was run rather badly. If it had been run in a more professional and targeted way, it would have had a much better chance of winning.
Well, look, I actually didn't hear what Maxine was saying because I was elsewhere.
Well, she certainly said those things that I just quoted to you.
But obviously people will have their own views about this election, what we did well, what we didn't do well. I'm sure there'll be a lot of...
what are your views? That's why I've got you here tonight.
Well, first, I'd say that I think Julia personally ran an extraordinarily good campaign as leader in very, very tough circumstances. I think she was put under enormous pressure publicly. She obviously... we went into this election with a tough fight. It got tougher given some of the things that occurred during the election campaign. She certainly was put under a lot of scrutiny by the public and by the media, as she should be, as somebody seeking re-election as Prime Minister. But I thought she came through it really demonstrating her leadership credentials and her strengths.
Here's the other key criticism that Maxine McHugh made. We walked away from the CPRS, emissions trading scheme. It was a core belief issue for many people who voted for Labor. We walked away from that, and people asked, this is Maxine McHugh I'm quoting here, what else are we going to walk away from? So, I mean, you're there as the Climate Change Minister, you see these things happening. Was it in fact a huge mistake to walk away from the emissions trading scheme?
Oh, well, I think there's no doubt that was a controversial decision, and it's a decision where you've got some pretty strong views on either side, Tony. I mean, there are people who think that was the right thing to do, and there are people who think that was the wrong thing to do.
Did you think it was the right thing or the wrong thing?
I'm a member of the government. I stand by the decision. Right or wrong, we stand by our decisions, and you make them at the time. People make them at the time with the best interest.
It sounds like you might have argued against it at the time, judging by what
you know, Tony, I don't do that. I don't talk about what happens inside Cabinet or elsewhere, but I would say this. So, I mean, there is no doubt there are a lot of people in this country who want action on climate change and who are deeply frustrated by the fact that because of what occurred last year, where you saw the Senate vote the legislation down, that we are where we are, that the political consensus has shattered, that Mr Abbott believes that climate change science is absolute crap, and I think on the ABC earlier this week or last week suggested that the world was in fact cooling. There are a lot of people frustrated by that, and I can understand that frustration.
Okay, let me ask you this, because we don't have a huge amount of time, but how would you feel about recasting and rewriting environmental policy with the Greens? Since you may well have Greens and proto-Green colleagues, potentially, if you manage to cobble together a government, a minority government, if you manage to even do that, and you have the Greens controlling the Senate as well with the balance of power, would you welcome working with the Greens to go back over all these policies and maybe toughen them up?
we would always, in government as we have been, seek to look to the national interest. Now, what we think is in the national interest may be different to somewhat, you or others in the media or some people in the Greens party think. But we know an issue like climate change is not resolved by simple solutions and slogans. It is a tough economic reform. That's why we went through the process we went through, and we understand there's no getting away from that tough economic reform.
All right, I'll just get a response from George Brandis to that.
Well, it's all very well to be saying this now, but going back to Maxine McHugh's remark, I think one of the important influences that completely changed public opinion in the early part of this year was when the Labor Party gave up on the CPRS, and I suspect against Penny's urging in Cabinet, I don't know that, but I suspect that, then they did communicate a message to the public that they stood for nothing. If they weren't prepared to stand by their most fundamental principle, the greatest moral challenge of our age, what did they stand for? So I think that's true. There were other factors as well, and I don't think you can assess the 2010 election, which is still in play. I mean, nobody even knows who's going to emerge as the government yet. But
all right, it certainly is in play, and we're going to go back to the people who can give us more detail on those seats. Thanks to both of you for joining us.
Thanks, Ted.
Well, we had some surprising action in Tasmania in this election that we weren't quite expecting, and where Tasmania may deliver up an independent to the new parliament. But the seat of Bass in Tasmania, which takes in Launceston and the northeast, this was a seat that Labor held by only 1%. They had a retiring member in Jodie Campbell, and the new ALP candidate, Jeff Lyons, has retained the seat with 80% of the vote counted. Anthony?
And if we look at the figures, that 44%, Jeff Lyons is easily ahead on the first preferences with a substantial vote there for the Greens. And if Labor's ahead with such a high Green vote on the first preferences, you can tell the Labor's going to go and win the seat, and they've done that, and they've taken that seat to a comfortable buffer at this election, which is a darn sight safer than, I remember Warwick, what's his name? I forgot his name. The former member who lost by 40 votes.
Warwick Smith.
Warwick Smith. So it's been quite a remarkable turnaround. But
Jeff Lyons, a name like Smith.
Jeff Lyons is now the new member for Bass.
And Jeff Lyons is standing by in his electorate. Jeff Lyons, this is must be a bittersweet kind of victory for you, because on the one hand you enter the parliament, on the other hand Labor seats are crashing all over the country, and it may yet be, in fact seems more likely that there'd be a Liberal minority government than Labor. So how are you feeling?
I would prefer to be a Labor government. I still live in hope. It's certainly nice to win in Bass, but I think a Labor government would be the best government for Australia.
So can you explain why Tasmania did not swing to the Liberals in this election, where there have been such dramatic swings in some other states?
I think the stimulus package has been well targeted in Tasmania. It's taken schools 20 and 30 years ahead of where they would be without the stimulus package. It's the broadband is a major issue here. No one in Tasmania wants a second-rate system, and the best system is the national broadband network. We can't believe that people of Australia don't realise that.
Has it taken you by surprise, as I imagine it's taken many others, that the seat of Denison may be lost to Labor, and that Andrew Wilkie may have won it as an independent?
Yeah, that's a surprise, because I think the Parliament's potentially going to lose a good member, but it's because I just can't comprehend that one really. He's obviously done some work. He's worked hard enough, and the people of his electorate must think he's the man for the job.
Well, Jeff Lyons, congratulations for winning the seat. As I said, in very strange circumstances, everything is still on a knife edge, and at this stage you don't know who's going to form the government and where exactly you'll be sitting in the Parliament. But thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
No problem. Anytime, Kerry. Bye.
OK, we're going to continue our seat run, and we're going to look at the new seat of McMahon in Sydney's West, and this is held by Chris Bowen, one of the up-and-comers in the Labor Party and a member of Cabinet. safe Labor seat. He held it with a margin, well, it has a margin of 13.8%, and we got 75% of the vote counted.
It's currently known as Prospect. It's a very safe Labor seat, covers the area around Prospect Reservoir, and at this stage, Chris Bowen is easily returned. He's got more than 50% of the vote. We've got a swing in that electorate of 5.8% to the Liberal Party, and at this stage, that's 5.7%. But Chris Bowen will be comfortably returned in McMahon.
Okay, the seat of North Sydney. This is Joe Hockey's seat, the Shadow Treasurer, who may... sorry, we're going to make a slight change there because I'm told Bob Brown, the Green leader, is on the tally room floor. We're just going to cross quickly to him.
We will use it to look after farmlands in Australia. The National Party got 4% of the vote tonight. We got 12% of the vote. So it's a very, very wonderful. I might add, on a vote-for-vote basis, the Greens on 12% would be having 17 seats in the lower house. And it's time we move to proportional representation so that everybody's vote is equal in this country. One person, one vote, one value. I thank the people of Australia. I congratulate both the coalition team with Mr Abbott and the Labor team with Prime Minister Gillard. I congratulate all candidates and all parties who took part. I also want to, while she's taken Gary Humphries below a quota, Lynn Hatfield-Dodds is certainly now a very outside chance in the Senate, but she's just won the biggest state or provincial Greens vote anywhere in the world, topping the Belgian Flemish Greens for the biggest vote in anywhere in the world. A great result for Lynn Hatfield-Dodds, and we'll take that seat in the ACT next time round.
What do you think about the possibility of a hung parliament? Is that encouraging for the Greens?
Well, I think that good government's what's encouraging, and the Australian people may have the Greens involved in that situation, and we'll deliver a good result out of it. Our job is to keep governments accountable as well as to get a better dividend. We did that in the last period of government, we'll do it in the next one.
Do you think it's climate change right back on the agenda?
It's clear the Greens will have the balance of power in the Senate. We'll use that responsibly and to make whoever's government more accountable. Now, what happens in the House of Representatives is just in the hands of the voters and those late votes coming in. The bushwalkers vote, by the way, always comes in well for the Greens, those postal votes coming from overseas and people are absentee. So factor that in, but we'll wait and see. We have a great experience in the balance of power. The Greens more than any other party, so we'll put that to good use, and I assure the people of Australia every vote that's gone to the Greens will be valued, and as Adam Bandt said tonight, we'll be looking to the whole of electorate of Australia when we make decisions both about the issues as they come up, but about the makeup of the next government if that becomes necessary. The swing to the Greens is because we held firm on the mining tax to help fund education. Because we want to put a carbon levy not onto the taxpayers as the big parties would, but onto the polluters. We want to, and let me not forget this one, it was a huge issue in the electorate. We want to end the discrimination against same-sex couples in marriage, and so that everybody who loves each other, as Adam said, may be able to marry if they wish to without discrimination in this wonderful country of ours. We'll help drag both the big parties, one in government, one in opposition, into the 21st century for Australia.
Do you think there's a lot of disillusionment towards the two major parties?
There was increasing disillusion, but people also loved what we Greens were saying, what Sarah had to say about compassion to asylum seekers. What Christine had to say about a carbon tax, what Rachel was doing in getting flexible work hours for parents of disabled children, what Scott was doing in ensuring we get a national broadband network. I do think if the coalition doesn't win government, it'll be because of national broadband network. People in Australia do want to be in the 21st century, for goodness sake.
Bob Brown, what do you say to the people who voted for the Green side?